I'm not the kind of person who audits his own paycheck for fun. I've been in corporate long enough to know payroll is messy. Taxes change, benefits get recoded, and sometimes the numbers look weird even when they're technically right. So when our year-end bonus finally hit, 2 days after the CEO's "we crushed it" all hands, I did what everyone else did. I exhaled. I let myself feel relieved for about 10 minutes. Then I opened the PDF, because earlier that month we'd gotten the official bonus letters. Not a casual Slack message, not a ballpark, a signed document in the HR portal. Base, target percentage, performance multiplier, and the final gross number. It even had that stiff legal sentence at the bottom about company discretion, like they always do, but the number was there in black and white. Mine was solid. Not life-changing, but meaningful. I'd planned around it the way adults do, paying down a chunk of debt, catching up on a few things I'd put off, and putting a little away so I could breathe in January instead of surviving it. That morning, I was at my kitchen table with cold coffee, laptop open, doing the boring, responsible thing, comparing the deposit in my bank to the breakdown on the pay stub. And that's when I saw it. A line I'd never seen before. Not federal withholding, not 401k, not medical. This was different, buried under the normal deductions like it didn't want to be noticed. Bonus adjustment, prior period, $12,400 NOS. Exactly $12,400. Not $12,399. 12, not $12,400 more. What were they? A clean round number that looked less like math and more like a decision. At first I assumed it was a formatting thing. Maybe the bonus letter was net and payroll was showing gross. Maybe they'd split it across checks. Maybe it would show up as a second deposit later. So I pulled up the bonus letter again. I compared the gross number on the letter to the gross number on the pay stub. The difference was, again, $12,400. I stared at it long enough that my brain did that thing where it tries to protect you by making you doubt your own eyes. Then the practical part of me kicked in. I opened our internal directory, found payroll's main line, called. 1 ring, 2 rings. A calm voice answered like she'd been waiting for me. Payroll services, this is Denise. Hi, I said, keeping my voice level. My name's Ethan. I'm calling about my bonus check. There's an adjustment line for $12,400. I need to understand what it's tied to. There was the kind of pause you don't notice until you're already uncomfortable. Can you read the line item again? She asked. I did. More silence, this time with faint typing in the background. Okay, she said slowly, and I heard the shift in her tone. Not panic, not confusion, something closer. Caution. And you're saying your bonus letter doesn't match what was paid? Yes, I said. The letter has a gross amount. The pay stub shows that same gross amount. Then this adjustment taking 12,400 out. I'm just asking what it's for and who authorized it. Another pause. Were you notified of any recoupment? She asked. No. Any leave corrections, overpayment? No. Any garnishments? She asked, almost like she was reading off a checklist. No, I said. Nothing like that. Her typing stopped. Then very carefully she said, 1 moment. I expected hold music. What I got was nothing. Not a click. Not a hold tone. Not even dead air with static. Just silence. So clean it felt intentional. I pulled the phone away and checked the screen. Still connected. Call timer running. Saw 38. 39. 40. I waited. At the 1 minute mark, I said, hello? Nothing. Denise? Still nothing. I waited another 10 seconds, then hung up. And right away I called back. This time it went straight to an automated message. We are experiencing unusually high call volume. I tried again. Same message. I stared at my phone like it had betrayed me, so I did what you do when you don't want to sound paranoid. I opened a ticket through the HR portal, attached the bonus letter and pay stub, and wrote a simple, polite note. Hi, payroll team. I'm seeing a bonus adjustment, prior period, of $12,400 on my check. My bonus letter does not reflect this. Please advise what this is tied to and the approval source. I hit submit. The ticket auto-generated instantly, like always. Except this time, the confirmation page didn't say a specialist will respond within 2 business days. It said, your request has been received and routed. That was it. No SLA, no category, no specialist. Just routed. Like the moment I typed that number into the system, it stopped being a normal payroll question. I refreshed the ticket page. The status changed from open to in review to pending internal in less than 30 seconds. I filed enough tickets in corporate systems to know what that means. It means someone touched it immediately. Someone saw my name and the amount and decided it wasn't allowed to sit in a normal queue. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe they were just fast today. Maybe the bonus cycle had everyone calling. Maybe Denise had been trying to pull up my record and the system glitched. So I went back into my pay history and checked the previous pay stubs, searching for anything that could add up to 12,400. Nothing. No overpayment. No reversal. No note. Just that one clean subtraction, appearing on the exact check where it would hurt the least visually, because the bonus number was big enough to camouflage it. That's the part that kept catching in my throat. If it was an error, it was a very neat error. If it was a policy, it was a very quiet one. And if it was a punishment, I couldn't think of what I'd done to deserve it until my email refreshed and I saw a calendar invite pop up for that afternoon. No message, no context. Just a meeting request from my HR business partner with the subject line, Quick Sync, compensation question. And that's when I realized the scariest part wasn't the missing money. It was how fast they moved the moment I asked why it was missing. The HR invite sat on my calendar like a thumb on my chest. No agenda, no notes, just Quick Sync, compensation question. And a 15-minute slot wedged between 2 of my normal meetings, like it was supposed to feel casual. It didn't. I screenshotted everything before I did anything else. The pay stub line, the bonus letter, the ticket status changes, the call log showing payroll picked up, went silent, and then suddenly high call volume every time I tried again. I even took a screenshot of the HR invite because I've learned the hard way that corporate systems love to update after the fact. By noon, my ticket in the HR portal had a new note. Not an answer, just a sterile internal comment that looked like it was written for someone else, not me. Employee inquiry received. Please direct employee to HRBP for further discussion. That was it. No explanation. No, we're reviewing. No, here's the policy. Just go talk to HR, which is corporate for. We're not putting this in writing. I went into the meeting already irritated but determined to stay controlled. I wasn't calling anyone a thief. I wasn't accusing anyone of fraud. I just wanted a basic explanation for a line item that wasn't in my letter. My HR business partner, Kara, joined on time. Camera on. Corporate smile. Neutral background. She looked like someone who'd been briefed for a conversation she didn't want to have. Hey, Ethan, she said warmly. Thanks for making time. Of course, I said. I'll be direct. My bonus is off by $12,400. Payroll went silent mid-call and my ticket got rerouted to you. I just want to know what that adjustment is. She nodded like she'd expected those exact words. Okay, she said slowly. So first, this isn't a payroll error. It's a compensation adjustment. That's the same thing I'm asking, I said. Adjustment tied to what? She took a breath and said, it's related to a prior period classification issue. Classification? I repeated. Like job level. Not job level, she said quickly. More like a cost allocation. I waited. She didn't continue. So I asked the next question, the one that always matters. Who approved it? Kara's eyes flicked off camera for half a second like she was checking something on another screen. I can't get into individual approvers, she said, but it was reviewed. Reviewed by who? I asked, still calm, but I could feel my jaw tightening. Finance? Payroll? Legal? It was reviewed, she repeated, like if she said it twice it would turn into an answer. I leaned back in my chair and forced myself to breathe. Okay, I said, then show me the policy, or show me the calculation. Something. My bonus letter is a document. It has a number. You paid a different number. If it's legitimate, and there should be a paper trail. Kara's smile thinned. I understand how that feels, she said. But bonus letters include discretion language. I'm not arguing discretion, I said. I'm asking why there's a specific line item for a specific amount. This isn't we adjusted the multiplier. It's a subtraction. She went quiet for a moment. Then she said carefully, Ethan, I want to advise you not to escalate this through informal channels. I blinked. Informal channels? Meaning, she said, I wouldn't recommend reaching out broadly. Finance leadership, executives, other departments. It will slow things down. That was the first moment my irritation turned into something sharper, because she wasn't answering the question. She was trying to control where the question could be asked. Who told you I was going to do that? I asked. Kara held her expression, but the silence gave her away. She didn't deny it. She didn't ask what I meant. She just said, I'm telling you what's best practice. I looked at the clock. 10 minutes left. Let's keep this simple, I said. I want 3 things in writing. What the adjustment is tied to. Why it's exactly $1,200. Who I can speak to in payroll who won't go silent on me mid-call. Kara's tone cooled. I can provide a written summary of what we discussed, she said, but I cannot provide internal approvals. Fine, I said, then provide the calculation. She paused again and her eyes flicked off camera a second time. I may be able to request a high-level breakdown, she said. No guarantees. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I didn't say lawyer. I just said one sentence that I knew would force the truth out eventually. Okay, I said. Then I need to know whether this adjustment is connected to a clawback or a compliance issue. Her face changed, not dramatically, not like in movies, just a tiny shift, like someone had stepped closer behind her. Why would you think it's compliance? She asked. Because the moment you mention compliance, people stop speaking casually. I'm guessing, I said, because payroll went silent, because the ticket was rerouted in seconds, and because you're advising me not to ask questions through other departments. That's not normal payroll behavior. Kara swallowed, then gave me a line that sounded practiced. This is an internal matter. There it was. Internal matter means you're not supposed to know. I stared at her for a beat, and then nodded. Okay, I said. Then here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to request my full payroll file and any compensation adjustments associated with my employee ID. That's a normal request. I'm also going to ask for the written policy that allows this deduction. Kara's voice sharpened. You're absolutely within your rights to request documentation, she said, but I want to reiterate, escalation can create unnecessary friction. Friction, that word. They weren't worried about helping me. They were worried about containment. The meeting ended with her promising a follow-up and me left staring at my own reflection in the black monitor, feeling that hot, humiliating mix of anger and disbelief. Because it wasn't just the money. It was the implication that someone could reach into my paycheck, pull out $12,400, and then treat me like the problem for noticing. I checked the HR portal again. My ticket had been updated, not with an answer, with a new status. Resolved, employee provided guidance. Resolved, as if the issue was me asking, as if the subtraction was normal, as if the silence mid-call never happened. And that was the moment I stopped trying to be reasonable, not loud, not reckless, just precise. Because if they were going to play this like an internal matter, then I needed to find out what internal system the $12,400 was really coming from. And I already had a suspicion. I just didn't know yet how deep it went. By that evening, I wasn't angry in a loud way anymore. I was angry in a quiet, organized way. The kind that makes you open a notebook and start writing dates down like you're building a case file, because something in your gut tells you this isn't going to end with a polite email. The first thing I did was pull the ticket history. Our HR portal doesn't just show open and resolved. If you click the tiny gray activity tab, most people never notice. It shows a full log. When the status changed, who touched it, and what queue it got sent to. My ticket hadn't been resolved by guidance. It had been routed twice in under a minute. Q1, Payroll Services. Q2, Compensation Ops. And then a name I didn't recognize. Compops, Manual Review. With a user ID attached. Not Kara, not Denise. Someone whose job description in plain language was, the people who do things payroll doesn't want to put in writing. I took screenshots, saved them to a personal folder I had on OneDrive, under a boring name, something like Home Documents. Because I've also learned that when you name a folder, Payroll Evidence, you might as well tape it to the inside of someone's windshield. Then I went into Workday. Most employees don't realize Workday stores more than the pay stub you see. There's an earnings section that shows pay elements, and if you dig deeper, there's often a memo field that's blank 99% of the time. My memo field wasn't blank. It didn't say error or correction or even adjustment. It said, bonus offset, CP17 true-up. CP17 meant nothing to me, but true-up did. A true-up is what accountants call it when a number was wrong earlier, and someone needs to make it right now. Usually quietly, usually without reopening the past. I stared at it for a long time, and then I did what I always do when I don't recognize a code. I searched our internal wiki. CP17. Nothing. I searched our shared drive. Still nothing. Then I searched an email, and there it was, one hit from 6 months earlier, buried in a thread I'd been CC'd on and ignored, because it didn't look relevant at the time. Subject, CP17 Client Profitability Reconciliation Q2. Client profitability. So it wasn't random. It wasn't benefits. It wasn't taxes. It was tied to a client. My client. Because of course it was. I'd been the lead on a multi-year account. High visibility, high pressure. The kind of contract that gets mentioned in leadership meetings because it makes the company look competent. We billed on a mix of fixed fee and time and materials, which meant finance lived and died by clean cost allocation. And I'd spent most of the year pushing people to code their time correctly because the client had audit rights. If our labor reporting was off, they could dispute invoices. If they disputed invoices, revenue got delayed. If revenue got delayed, someone in leadership had to explain why. I clicked into the old email chain. It was full of finance language, margin variance, labor capitalization, billing recode, cost center hygiene, and in the middle of it was one sentence that made my stomach drop. CP17 true-up will be addressed via compensation offsets for impacted cost center individuals. Impacted cost center individuals, not project budget, not department expense, not executive reserve. Individuals, meaning people, meaning me. I felt heat creep up my neck as I read it again, slower. They had taken a client profitability problem, one created by bad coding, misallocation, or someone higher up gaming the numbers, and instead of owning it in a budget line, they were pushing it into employee pay, one person at a time where it would look like a normal payroll adjustment. That night, I stopped being the guy asking for clarification. I became the guy trying to understand the mechanism. Because if a company can silently true up profit by reaching into bonuses, then the question isn't, why did they do it to me? The question is, how many people did they do it to? And who decided it was acceptable? I didn't sleep much. At 6:10 a.m., I was back in Workday, clicking anything that looked like it had an audit trail. Most screens don't, but some do. Under the pay element details, there was a field called Initiated By. It wasn't HR. It wasn't payroll services. It was a finance operations analyst. Someone with a real name, not an alias. And right beneath that was another field. Reference batch, CP17Q4 Manual 03. Manual. They weren't even pretending it was automated. That was my first micro win. And it hit like oxygen. Because now I had something concrete. That wasn't just vibes and silence and corporate tone. I had a memo code, a program name, and a manual batch reference. So I did the next logical thing. I checked whether anyone else on my team had it. I didn't broadcast it. I didn't post in Slack. I didn't accuse anyone. I called one person I trusted, an older engineer named Mark. Someone who'd been around long enough to know when something smelled wrong, but not dramatic enough to turn it into a bonfire. "Can you do me a favor?" I asked. "Check your pay stub. Look for anything that says bonus offset or true up. I'm not asking how much, just if it exists." Mark was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Hang on." I listened to the faint tapping of keys, and then he said something I didn't expect. "Oh, wow," he muttered. "Yeah, I have one." My throat tightened. "How much?" "Not as big as yours," he said. $2,000 and change. I didn't even notice. 2,000. He hadn't noticed. Which meant this system wasn't built for fairness. It was built for invisibility. Because the perfect theft isn't the one you can't prove. It's the one the victim doesn't realize happened. I thanked Mark, told him to screenshot it for himself, and ended the call before I said anything that could be repeated back as Ethan is rallying people. Then I went back to the original payroll call. I found Denise in the directory. Direct extension. I called once. It rang, and then went to voicemail. So I tried a different approach. I replied to the auto confirmation email from the HR portal ticket, the one that routes back into their case system. And I wrote a message that was polite but surgical. For documentation, my pay element memo shows bonus offset CP17 true up with batch reference CP17 Q4 manuals 3 and an initiated by field under finance ops. Please provide the written policy authorizing compensation offsets for client profitability, reconciliations, plus the calculation used to derive $12,400. I hit send, and I sat there staring at the screen, waiting for the usual, "We received your message." Instead, I got an automated reply I'd never seen before. "This case has been restricted." Restricted, not escalated, not assigned. Restricted. And that single word landed heavier than the missing money, because it confirmed what I'd been feeling since the call went silent. They weren't treating this like a payroll question anymore. They were treating it like a containment event. And then, because corporate systems love to betray you in small, cruel ways, I refreshed my access to the ticket portal. The entire thread was gone. Not closed, not archived, gone, like it had never existed. I sat back, staring at the empty page, and for the first time since this started, I felt something like panic try to rise in my chest, but right behind it came something colder. Because I still had the screenshots, I still had the memo code, I still had the manual batch number, and now I knew exactly what I was dealing with, a company that would rather erase a question than answer it. And I hadn't even found out yet who had the authority to restrict a case that involved employee pay. But I was about to. I didn't go to Slack. I didn't start a crusade. I didn't even tell Mark to talk to anyone. I did the one thing companies can't shrug off without leaving fingerprints. I put it in the channels that create obligations. First, I filed a formal pay dispute through the company's payroll dispute form. The one nobody uses because it's buried under 5 menus and written like it was designed to discourage you. I attached the signed bonus letter, the pay stub with the stoozed $12,400 line, the workday memo field showing bonus offset, CP17 true up, the batch reference and screenshots of the ticket being restricted and then disappearing. Then I submitted a second report through the Ethics and Compliance hotline. Not, "My bonus is short." not HR is mean. I wrote it the way an auditor would read it. Manual compensation offsets appear to be used to reconcile client profitability variances, CP17 true-up, by deducting employee bonus pay without notice or documentation. Case records were restricted after inquiry. Request review for compliance with wage practices and financial reporting controls. I hit submit at 7:42 a.m. At 8:05, my phone rang. Unknown internal number. I let it go to voicemail. At 8:07, an email hit my inbox from Kara. Subject: following up. Body: do you have time today for a quick conversation? At 8:11, a calendar invite appeared from someone I had never met. Director, Compensation Operations. 30 minutes. Attendees: Kara, HRBP, Denise, Payroll, and someone from Finance Ops. And the meeting title made my stomach tighten. CP17 Clarification. So much for internal matter. They were saying the code out loud now. I joined on time. 4 cameras, 4 careful faces. The mood wasn't hostile. It was clinical. Like a small emergency they wanted contained before it became a real one. The Comp Ops Director did the opening. Ethan, he said, we understand you have questions about an adjustment. Correct, I said, and I want the same things I asked for yesterday. The policy, the calculation, and why my prior case was restricted. A beat of silence. Then Denise, Payroll Denise, finally spoke. Same voice as the phone, but tighter now. I want to apologize, she said. The call drop was unintentional. It didn't drop, I said calmly. It stayed connected. You stopped responding. And then the general line went to high call volume immediately afterward. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes flicked to the Comp Ops Director like she wanted him to take the wheel. He did. Let's focus on the resolution, he said. There was a reconciliation related to cost allocation and prior period reporting. A portion of bonuses were offset for a limited set of employees tied to that cost center. A limited set, I repeated. So you're confirming other people were hit. We're not discussing other employees, Kara cut in smoothly. I ignored that. Where is the written policy that allows you to deduct bonus compensation for a cost allocation true-up? I asked. And where is the notification that was supposed to be sent to me? The finance ops person, young guy, nervous energy, finally spoke. It's not a deduction, he said quickly. It's a correction. Call it whatever you want, I said. It's $12,400 removed from my bonus with no notice and no breakdown. And when I asked, the case was restricted and erased. Another silence, this one heavier. And then the Comp Ops Director said the first honest thing I'd heard all week. We should not have restricted your case. Kara turned her head slightly like that wasn't the script. He continued anyway. An internal control flagged your ticket due to the code you referenced. That process is being reviewed. That was my moment of realization. The company wasn't afraid of my paycheck question. They were afraid of what the paycheck question implied. Because CP17 didn't just touch HR. It touched financial controls. I kept my voice level. Okay, I said. Then I want the calculation. Show me how you got $12,400. The finance ops guys started to answer, then stopped. He looked down at something, notes maybe, and his face drained a little. And then he said, I don't have the worksheet in front of me. That's corporate for. The worksheet looks bad. The Comp Ops Director leaned forward. Ethan, he said, we're prepared to reverse the adjustment pending review. Pending review, I repeated, meaning you'll give it back and then decide later whether you can take it again. Kara's smile returned, thin and urgent. We're trying to resolve this quickly, she said. This doesn't need to be adversarial. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I said one sentence and the room changed. I already filed an ethics and compliance report this morning. I'm not withdrawing it. And then chaos. Not shouting, just the sudden tightening in posture, the micro-expressions. The way everyone became aware there was now a record outside of HR's control. Kara's eyes went sharp. The finance ops guy went still. Denise stopped pretending she was just there to be helpful. The comp ops director exhaled through his nose like he'd been hoping I hadn't done that. He nodded once. Understood? Then he said carefully, in that case, we're going to pause this call and regroup with the appropriate parties. Before you do, I said, I want something clear. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking for documentation. If you reverse it, I want the reversal memo to state exactly what happened and why. Kara opened her mouth. He cut her off gently. We'll follow up, he said. They ended the call. 10 minutes later, I tried to open Workday. I was still employed, still logged in. But a new banner flashed at the top of the page. Certain pay elements are temporarily unavailable due to maintenance. Maintenance? At 10:02 a.m.? Sure. At 10:30, Mark texted me a single line. HR just asked if I filed any payroll complaints. What is going on? So they were fishing, not correcting. Fishing. That was just the beginning. By noon, my manager called me, voice unusually careful. Hey, he said, quick heads up. Finance wants to pull you into a margin review meeting for the account. Today. What's the agenda? I asked. He hesitated. They didn't give me one. Of course they didn't. I joined that meeting too. This one had different faces. Controller's office, finance business partner, someone from revenue recognition. People who don't show up unless there's risk. They weren't asking about my bonus anymore. They were asking about how time was coded, who approved it, and whether the client had ever requested an audit trail. Because if CP17 was a profitability reconciliation, it meant something had been wrong enough that someone tried to fix it quietly by moving numbers around. And now the person they took money from was forcing them to explain it out loud. Halfway through, the controller asked me directly, did anyone instruct your team to code time in a way that improved margin? That's the moment I felt the floor shift, because the question wasn't about payroll. It was about whether the company had manipulated reporting. I answered truthfully, no, I said, and I've actually pushed the opposite. I've told people to code accurately because the client has audit rights. The controller stared at me for a second, then nodded once, and the finance business partner, who hadn't spoken the whole time, suddenly started typing furiously. When the meeting ended, my inbox refreshed. New email. Sender, Ethics and Compliance Case Management Subject. Case accepted. Internal audit assigned. 2 lines beneath it. You may be contacted for an interview. Do not discuss this matter with others. And that's when I realized they weren't deciding whether to pay me back. They were deciding who was going to take the fall for building a system where profit problems could be patched by quietly carving money out of employees. Then my phone rang again. Same unknown internal number as earlier. This time, I answered. A calm voice said, Hi, Ethan. This is internal audit. I'd like to schedule 30 minutes today. And before I could respond, she added, We also need you to forward any screenshots you have, because some of the records were modified this morning. That night, I didn't feel panic. I felt something else. Relief. Because if internal audit was asking me for my screenshots to reconstruct what the system had erased, it meant I wasn't imagining it. And it meant someone, somewhere inside the company, had finally decided this wasn't an internal matter. It was a control failure. And control failures don't end with apologies. They end with consequences. The internal audit interview happened the same day, not next week. Not when scheduling allows, same day. That alone told me everything I needed to know, because companies don't move fast for an employee's feelings. They move fast when a number touches something bigger than HR, financial controls, reporting risk, or an angry client that can audit you into the ground. The auditor, Lena, didn't waste time with small talk. She was calm, precise, the kind of person who asks questions in a way that makes lying feel exhausting. Walk me through the timeline, she said. Start with the first moment you notice the $12,400. So I did. Kitchen table, bonus letter, pay stub, the line item. The payroll call that went silent, The ticket that got rerouted, then restricted, then erased. The Workday memo, CP17 true-up. The manual batch reference. I didn't rant. I didn't speculate. I just gave her facts in order and sent her the screenshots while we were still on the call. When she saw the restricted message and the missing ticket thread, she didn't react emotionally, but I watched her eyes narrow slightly, the way they do when a professional sees intent. "Okay," she said. "That's helpful." Then she asked the question that made my stomach drop, because it confirmed what the margin review meeting had hinted at. "Did you ever receive communication, any communication, about bonus offsets tied to client profitability reconciliations?" "No," I said. "Nothing." "And to your knowledge," she asked, "was this applied to multiple employees within the same cost center?" "I confirmed one other person had a smaller offset," I said carefully. "I'm not naming anyone, but yes." She nodded as if she'd expected that. Then she said, "I'm going to be very direct. If manual compensation offsets were used to correct financial reporting outcomes, that's not just an HR issue." "I figured," I said. Lena paused like she was choosing her words. "And if case records were restricted or removed after inquiry, that's a separate issue." That was the first moment I felt the situation leave my hands completely. Because now it wasn't Ethan versus payroll. It was internal audit versus the system. 2 days passed. No new meetings, no threats, no follow-ups from Kara. My Workday maintenance banner disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared. Then on the third morning, an email hit my inbox from Compensation Operations. Subject: correction confirmed. Short, cold, no apology. The body said, "We have completed our review. The offset applied to your bonus was incorrect and will be reversed on the next off-cycle payroll run. A corrected statement will be issued." Incorrect. Not misunderstanding. Not policy. Not discretion. Incorrect. At 2:17 p.m., I received a separate email from Finance Ops. Subject: follow-up. This one tried to sound human. "Ethan, apologies for the confusion. A prior period true-up was allocated in error. We've corrected your record." Allocated in error. That phrasing mattered. It implied there was a real allocation, and mine had just been misapplied, which told me what the company still wanted to protect: the existence of the system itself. But I didn't need them to confess in writing. I needed closure. I needed my money back, and I needed the behavior to stop. The next morning, my bank app pinged with an off-cycle deposit. $2,400, not approx, not reduced. And because payroll reversals come with their own tax treatment, there was also a second deposit, smaller, covering the tax correction. It was the cleanest admission they could make without saying the quiet part, out loud. We took it. We shouldn't have. We're putting it back before you create a bigger record. Later that afternoon, Lena called again. Her voice was the same calm tone as before. "I can't share the full details," she said, "but I can tell you this. You were not the only impacted employee, and this is being escalated as a control issue." I didn't feel triumph. I felt something closer to peace, because the goal was never to win. It was to not be treated like a number you could shave down when the spreadsheet didn't balance. I asked her one question. "Will they be notified properly going forward?" There was a pause. "Yes," she said. "There will be a formal communication and a revised process. And there will be accountability." Accountability is corporate's favorite word because it can mean anything. But in her tone, it didn't sound like nothing. A week later, Kara emailed me for the first time since the chaos. Subject: closing the loop. This time the message wasn't sharp. It was cautious. "I'm glad this has been resolved. Please let me know if you need anything else." She didn't say sorry. She didn't say we handled it wrong. But she used the word resolved in a different way than she had in the portal. Not resolved. Employee provided guidance. Resolved. As in, we can't bury this anymore. The last piece fell into place quietly. A month later, at an all-hands, the CFO did a short segment on process improvements, and strengthening controls around compensation adjustments. No names, no numbers, no scandal. But I heard the phrases: manual overrides, documentation requirements, employee notifications, audit trail integrity. And I sat there listening, remembering how fast my ticket vanished the moment I asked a simple question. Because that's what this was always about. Not revenge in the movie sense. Not screaming. Not lawsuits. Not a dramatic exit. Just a man at a kitchen table who noticed one line was off and refused to be trained into silence. They thought I'd accept it because it was buried, because it was complicated, because internal matter is supposed to make you back away. But the truth is, the company only has two choices when you bring receipts. They can explain, or they can panic. And once I saw them panic, I stopped feeling afraid. I stopped feeling small. I got my money back. And I got something better than an apology. A system that now had to leave a trail every time it tried to do this to someone else.